things are taking longer. And the days of I could have a conversation with you and we could be at the closing table in 30 days. It's just those days are pretty much gone, right? We're getting back to the longer lifetime cycle, the cash conversion cycle. Things are just taking longer. So I love, to your point, to maximize the opportunity. You're doing the thing, you're acquiring the opportunity, really being able to maximize. What does that look like right now and moving into the future from what you're seeing, what you're doing, what you're coaching, what you're teaching on?
So it's interesting. What I did about a year and a half ago is I sat down and I looked at our business, and I did this little exercise, and I encourage agents to do this. And I actually just put up a video on TikTok about this, which is take a sheet of paper and write your name in the middle of that paper and circle it. And then I want for you to think about all of the people in a real estate transaction that ultimately you're the nucleus of, right? Like, you're going to bring the client, you're going to get the ball rolling on this transaction, but write down all the different industries and people that are going to get paid from you bringing that transaction to the table. Mm-hmm. And then write down or circle all of those that you're actually getting paid on. And the chances are is you're going to be lucky if it's one outside of the nucleus. And to me, that's just a waste. It was totally a waste. And so looking at our flipping business, and understanding that, okay, when I go and buy a house and I renovate this house, all of these people are going to get paid from the time that I buy it until I sell it. So why can't I figure out a way, instead of constantly being on this hamster wheel of figuring out how to get more deals and how to do more and going wide, how about I go deep? Which is something that, Jay Kinder, that you guys have always preached, even with building out our revenue share groups and doing different things like that, was, instead of going wide, you want to go deep. And I really leaned into owning our process. And so every step of the process, I wanted to have my hand in it in some way. It may not be that I'm the jack of all trades and I'm building out, each individual business, but partnering up with people and having some sort of way to capitalize on as many steps as possible in a process that you are triggering, that you are initiating, I think is very, very important for realtors, especially in today's climate where everything is taking longer and there is just less of it.
Chauncey, the question that I want to ask you is how do you determine what's a fair value exchange within that process? And you look at, who's getting a bite of that apple every time that you do the transaction. For example, you find the flip. Now you got all of the trades, everybody that's going to get paid off of that, the whole ripple effect from that. And even as working with a buyer or a seller, when we get them into getting them through the process and getting them into a home or getting their home sold, there's all of the people that get a bite of that apple. And it's always been, to the point of like, listen, you are either sweat equity, probably some check equity to acquire that opportunity. Right. And then you're just going to give that to somebody else and they're going to get paid and right. You're not getting anything, but you spent the money to acquire that opportunity, be it through your sweat, your effort, or you're paying for the opportunities, you're paying for the leads, you're paying for the lead systems, and you're just going to give it away. So that's the first, right? The mental shift is like, oh, wow, right? I am spending time and money to acquire that. But now, okay, they're getting a bite. How do I get compensated? And what is a fair compensation trade for me giving you that opportunity? How do you evaluate that?
I think that's a great question. I think that it starts with actually integrating all of these things into your process. We were talking before we went live about building out a framework, building right. out a duplicatable, a proven process that you have. And I think it's really more about integrating all of these other variables into your process. And when you integrate things into your process, then those other variables become dependent on your process. And at that point, when things are dependent on you and on your process and on your machine working, when they are just a cog in the wheel that you've created, then ultimately you set your own damn price because they understand that they wouldn't exist without you. And that's ultimately what we've done, kind of with our business. And so to give like an example, with building out these verticals, because I feel like we're talking almost in code here. So with the flipping business, acquiring a property. Most people that get into the business are going to use a wholesaler. They're going to have someone that just brings them a deal. Well, instead of doing that, I made acquisitions a part of our process. Now, do we take deals in from outside sources? Of course.
Sure.
But to have a duplicatable process built in there, then that's a part of it. And then the hard money lending, the commercial lines of credit, like we figured out a way to tap in and be able to actually provide lending for others. And in providing lending for others, then now I get a discount on my lending. So it's helping me twofold. So whether I'm actually involved in this process for myself or not, like I'm going to profit off of it. The construction part, instead of hiring a general contractor and having their crews work, we own that part of the process. So whether I'm flipping my house or I'm flipping a house for you, or even just doing a retail job, I now have a construction company. I now have design. I now, if I'm going to be ordering cabinets and countertops and flooring, I have direct contacts with wholesalers, with wholesale companies and suppliers, instead of having to go to Home Depot and paying a markup. So essentially, I've removed the middleman from a lot of pieces, and the things that I couldn't remove the middleman from, I've just integrated those services so hardcore into my process that they're coming to me every day saying, when do we have more? And they understand my value, and I can pretty much name whatever stake that I want in that, because they largely wouldn't exist without me.
So what is it? What is a good stake without like taking too much from them to where it tarnishes the relationship, right? At some point you're like, man, this isn't a win for me. I feel like Chauncey's winning more than me. So how do you value to where, hey, this is good. This is good for me. This is good for them. Hey, let's keep doing this.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that it's, I really think it's all just dependent upon the relationship, and it just depends on how much you're putting into it. It's no different than with realtors. When we send a referral out to somebody, all we've done is made an initial conversation, and then we pass that referral on, and then we're like, I want 25 or 30%. It's an arbitrary number. We haven't really done anything for it besides spark up a conversation. And so for those, 10, 25%, whatever that end buyer feels like is the value on it. But I don't necessarily know that there's a number, but I know that you need to position yourself so that you can at least even have the conversation, because if you're not in a position, then the number is always going to be zero. Right. So even if it's 10% or 20% or 40%, that's something that you'll just have to determine based on who you're talking to and the process.
Yeah, I 100%. So that was always kind of our rule of thumb. We defaulted back to always to the 25%, because everybody, especially dealing in the real estate industry, everybody kind of understood that, right? Even if you were a trade, they were familiar with that number. Oh yeah, 25%. I've heard that. Yeah, that makes sense. So how we would look at it is like, okay, well, what are they making off of the deal? Like, what is their service? Even all the way down to the carpet cleaning guy, right? And he charges $100, for example, right, to come in and do his service. Well, 25% $25. Is it worth $25?
Right.
And then, you look at some of these other trades that we would look at, and we would be like, okay, well, they probably don't want to give up the 25% or $25, but they would be willing to do something. And what we found is that we could just do a trade and like, hey, I'm going to need my stuff cleaned a couple times a year. Could you just hook us up a couple times a year and I'll keep hooking you up? And so there's a lot, we did a lot of deals, just handshake off of that type of an arrangement, right? So find the value exchange based upon, like you said, I mean, when you're cranking and you have a lot of opportunities and you're able to acquire a lot of opportunities, you can demand a little bit more. Absolutely. And so I think it's super, super smart for agents to be thinking about that. These bigger teams, and I've been on Matt and DJ here in Pittsburgh. I've been on them pretty hardcore on like, listen, guys, I mean, what do we know with older cities, older communities? There's always going to be plumbing issues. There's always going to be, HVAC heater issues, cold climate. There's always going to be those type of issues. Why not own a stake in one of those companies that you're sending out all the time?